stripping Meghan and Andrew of their titles was the right course.
The message did not arrive with ceremony, warning, or room for negotiation. It reached California before sunrise, carrying the authority of the crown and a deadline measured not in weeks, but hours. Meghan Markle had been formally prohibited from entering British territory under the terms of a sealed royal directive. Beside her, Prince Harry read the final sentence twice. He had 48 hours to answer, and every possible response threatened to destroy something he still loved. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Harry stood at the kitchen counter, pages trembling in his hands. He placed them down, stepped away, then returned as though distance might have changed the words. It had not. The sealed royal directive, a formal written order carrying the authority of the royal household, barred Meghan from entering the United Kingdom indefinitely. It also gave him 48 hours to accept the conditions, challenge them, or lose what remained of his ceremonial relationship with the monarchy. Meghan watched his face harden. She took the document, read every line, and folded it with a calmness that frightened him more than anger. This was not a temporary security measure. It reached into future ceremonies, family visits, royal residences, and every return Harry might make to Britain. Acceptance meant returning alone. Refusal meant surrendering the last formal ties connecting him to the institution that had shaped his life. Silence deepened when Meghan reached a confidential paragraph. It referred to a Windsor breach, but offered no evidence, named witness, or explanation of what had supposedly happened. Harry searched the page again, while she asked who had written the accusation, and why they had been denied a chance to answer. The document gave them a punishment, but withheld the crime. Meghan slid the pages across the table. They are not asking you to choose a country. They are asking you to choose between your wife and your blood. Harry gripped the chair and said nothing. He knew the deadline was designed to force movement before emotion settled, and any choice would wound someone. Then his phone lit up. Prince William had sent one message privately. "Do not respond until we speak. There is more in that file than you know." Harry read it twice. Meghan saw the change immediately. The order had divided husband from heritage, but now it carried another threat. The possibility that someone inside the family had hidden the truth from them. But the order could not be understood through legal language alone, because behind its cold conditions stood 4 people whose private wounds had finally become matters of royal power. For the public, the crisis appeared simple. Meghan was barred, and Harry had been ordered to respond. Inside the family, nothing was simple. A husband feared abandoning his wife. A brother believed he was protecting the crown. A father faced the possibility of losing his younger son forever. And Meghan, sitting thousands of miles away, understood that the decision was designed to isolate her, but perhaps even more powerfully, to test whether Harry would remain isolated with her. Harry felt the deadline closing around him. Britain was not merely a country he had left behind. It held memories of his childhood, the shadow of his mother, the pride of his military service, and the family ties he had never managed to cut completely. Now those memories stood against the life he had built in California. The crown, the institution representing the monarch, the royal household, and its official authority, was forcing him to choose which identity would survive. Meghan understood the danger more clearly than anyone. The ban did not only prevent her from crossing a border, it created a future in which her children could be welcomed into royal spaces while their mother remained outside. That possibility disturbed her more than the order itself. She told Harry that reconciliation had never been real if access could be used as pressure the moment the palace wanted control. Charles sat alone with a duplicate of the directive inside his private study. The king removed his glasses, placed them beside the file, and asked whether his younger son had received it. When the aide confirmed that he had, the monarch looked toward the closed door. He could have ordered a call. He could have demanded another conversation. Instead, he remained silent, caught between the father who feared losing Harry and the sovereign who believed retreat might weaken the monarchy. William carried a different burden. The prince believed the institution could no longer survive repeated private talks followed by public conflict. Yet certainty abandoned him when he remembered Harry as the frightened boy who had once walked beside him through unimaginable grief. The future king had promised to protect his brother then. Now he was protecting the crown from him. Catherine found her husband standing over an unsigned note. She asked whether the ban had truly been necessary. William did not look up. He said necessity was no longer the question. The real question was what had happened during a confidential exchange involving Meghan, and why no one had been told the full truth. Meghan opened a private folder containing dated correspondence, written summaries, and documented accounts of conversations with palace representatives. She told Harry she had preserved everything because months earlier she sensed Britain might one day be used as leverage. Her records all pointed toward one evening at Windsor. Charles lifted the telephone and asked for the line to California. Then he lowered the receiver without dialing. To understand why the palace crossed such an extraordinary line, the story must return to the evening when one closed-door meeting transformed years of resentment into a point of no return. The ban did not begin with a public interview, a newspaper headline, or an angry palace statement. It began during a private meeting at Windsor, where 4 people entered, believing they were discussing boundaries, and left convinced they had witnessed a threat. No cameras recorded what followed. No official minutes were released. Yet one sentence spoken across a polished table would later be cited as the moment reconciliation ended, and the machinery of exclusion began. Months earlier, Harry and Meghan had joined William and Catherine for what was meant to be a final attempt at control. The discussion covered future family visits, security arrangements, and whether the children might attend major royal occasions without reopening old wounds. A royal occasion meant an official event connected to the monarchy, where attendance carried both public meaning and private consequence. Every detail mattered, because one failed agreement could destroy the last path toward reconciliation. Meghan entered cautiously. She wanted written guarantees that private conversations would not reach the press or later appear in palace briefings. William wanted the opposite protection, certainty that confidential meetings would not become material for interviews, documentaries, or public commentary. The prince kept his voice measured, but Harry heard accusation beneath every word. His brother heard the same hostility in return. Catherine tried to pull them back. She placed a handwritten proposal on the table, offering limited family contact away from official duties, hoping distance from palace machinery might allow trust to rebuild. Meghan read it carefully, then asked why she was being asked to accept restrictions no other royal spouse faced. The princess answered that trust had been damaged on all sides. Her voice trembled, and for one brief moment, everyone understood how close the family stood to collapse. Harry turned toward William. He accused him of hiding personal resentment behind institutional language. The future king pushed his chair backward and said every disagreement could not continue becoming a test of loyalty. Their voices rose. Catherine asked both men to stop, but Meghan had already made a decision. She placed a small recording device on the table. Meghan said she had brought it for protection and insisted it had never been activated. William stared at it, then ended the meeting immediately. To him, its presence proved that a protected family discussion might have been captured without consent. Harry defended his wife, arguing that she had shown it openly because she intended no deception. Palace security later examined the device, but the full technical findings were withheld. A documented internal account referred only to an unacceptable breach of protected space, meaning a violation inside an area where private royal discussions were expected to remain secure. That same night, William sent a written assessment to Charles, recommending that Meghan lose access to secure royal properties. As Harry and his wife left, Catherine asked whether the device had truly been used. The prince kept his eyes on the table. Intent is no longer something the crown can afford to guess. Harry never learned that the original recommendation was far narrower than the ban that followed. The discovery that the ban had grown beyond William's first demand would bring the brothers into direct confrontation, with neither prepared for the name revealed inside the final draft. With 36 hours remaining, Harry entered a secure video call expecting a warning from his brother. Instead, He found William alone, without aides, folders, or prepared statements. For several seconds, neither man spoke. The future king looked exhausted. The younger prince looked furious. Years of interviews, funerals, accusations, and missed opportunities stood between them. Then Harry held the directive toward the screen and demanded the one answer the palace had refused to give him. William had arranged the encrypted conversation without the king's private secretary or legal advisors. An encrypted call was a protected communication designed to prevent outsiders from hearing or recording the exchange. He knew the moment officials joined, every sentence would become careful, cold, and impossible to take back. This had to remain between brothers, even if brotherhood was already close to breaking. Harry accused him first. He said the directive had been designed to separate him from Meghan, isolate her, and pull him back toward royal control. He asked whether William truly expected him to attend family occasions, while his wife remained treated as a threat. The prince listened without interrupting, but his face tightened when Harry said the crown had stopped seeing Meghan as a person. William denied writing the full ban. He admitted recommending that Meghan lose access to secure royal residences until trust could be restored. A secure royal residence meant a palace or estate protected for private family use, official duties, and sensitive meetings. He insisted he had never demanded that she be prohibited from the entire country. He had not even seen the final wording until shortly before it reached California. Harry struck the document against the desk. He told his brother that the recommendation had made everything else possible. William had created the weapon, he said, and was now pretending innocence because someone else had chosen how far to fire it. The future king answered that protecting the family could no longer mean ignoring every breach until another crisis exploded. Then Diana entered the argument. Harry said their mother would have recognized isolation because she had lived through it. William rose so quickly that his chair moved behind him. He walked away, returned, and stared directly at the screen. "Do not use her to make me the enemy." Harry replied that he did not need to. The document had already done that. William finally revealed what the palace had hidden. The final directive contained an amendment added after his original security recommendation. An amendment was an official change inserted into a document before approval. It had transformed a palace access restriction into a nationwide exclusion and attached the 48-hour ultimatum. The authorization had come through the sovereign's private office. William warned that Charles might not have written every condition, but nothing could have moved forward without the king's approval. He leaned toward the screen and asked Harry to wait before responding publicly. Harry answered that their father had spent years finding documents whenever words became too difficult. As the call ended, William sent him one confidential page showing the full chain of approval. That single page shifted the battle away from the brothers and toward the person whose signature carried the crown's final authority, King Charles himself. The public would eventually see the king's authority stamped across the order, but authority was not the same as authorship. Inside the palace, drafts had moved through private secretaries, security advisors, constitutional council, and members of the family before reaching Charles. Every revision hardened the language. Every warning narrowed the available choices. By the time the file reached the monarch's desk, it no longer asked whether Meghan should be restricted. It asked whether Charles was willing to appear weak by refusing. William's original memorandum had called only for temporary limits on Meghan's access to protected royal properties. A memorandum was a formal written recommendation used to record advice before a final decision. Security advisors soon argued that a narrow restriction would create confusion at airports, residences, and major ceremonies. They warned that officials could not enforce one rule inside palace walls and another the moment she stepped beyond them. Charles listened as each advisor turned uncertainty into pressure. Future gatherings could be disrupted. Security teams could be accused of unequal treatment. Another family visit could end in another public battle. The king was told that hesitation would not look compassionate. It would look weak, divided, and dangerously unprepared. Charles read the final recommendation alone after everyone had left. An untouched cup of tea cooled beside him while he studied every paragraph. His eyes stopped at the 48-hour deadline. He circled it with a pencil, then read it again. The restriction troubled him, but the ultimatum frightened him more, because it forced Harry to choose before grief, anger, or loyalty had time to settle. Camilla entered quietly and saw the mark around the deadline. The Queen Consort asked whether he was preparing to sign as a monarch or reacting as a wounded father. He answered that those roles had stopped being separate the moment private family conflict began shaping the crown's public future. She reminded him that refusing to decide would not bring his son back. It would only extend a crisis that had already consumed years of his reign. Charles admitted what he feared most. Harry might reject the order and walk away from royal life completely. He might also keep the children beyond the reach of future family gatherings. Camilla told him that indecision would not protect those bonds. It would merely delay the moment they broke. Then Charles discovered the deadline had been added by his senior private office. Its purpose was simple: prevent Harry from organizing a prolonged media response before answering. The king ordered it removed. Hours later, a confidential assessment changed everything. It predicted leaks, competing statements, and another public war if the decision remained open. Charles reversed himself. He restored the deadline, but added one private offer. Harry could speak directly with him before responding. Charles held the fountain pen above the page. He signed, closed the file, and whispered, "He will believe I chose the crown over him." The secretary answered, "Your Majesty, he may believe there was never a choice." The order had now become more than a ban against Meghan. It was a test of whether Harry would accept a future in which his family could enter the royal world only by leaving her outside it. The consequences began before Harry gave his answer. Invitations were paused. Security discussions were frozen. Names disappeared from provisional guest lists. In Britain, palace officials behaved as though the decision had already been accepted. In California, Meghan watched the future rearrange itself in real time. Then an email concerning their children arrived, and the conflict changed instantly. What had appeared to be a battle over one woman's access now threatened to divide a family across generations. Royal staff suspended every plan involving Meghan's presence at ceremonies, commemorations, and private residence visits. A commemoration was an official event held to honor a person, anniversary, or national moment. Harry could still attend in theory, but each arrangement was quietly rewritten on the assumption that he would arrive alone. The meaning was brutal. The palace was no longer waiting for his answer. It was building a future around his separation from his wife. Meghan opened the new communication at her desk. It stated that Archie and Lilibet could remain eligible for private family visits in Britain if separate security and guardianship arrangements were approved. Guardianship arrangements meant the formal rules deciding which adult would be responsible for the children during a visit. She stopped at the phrase, "independent maternal attendance," and closed the laptop with both hands. Harry saw anger cross her face, then watched it collapse into hurt. Meghan told him that no institution would decide her children could enter a family space from which their mother was forbidden. To her, the email did not protect their children's royal connection. It tried to separate that connection from her identity, as though motherhood could be negotiated around palace convenience. Harry felt the full weight of the trap. Rejecting the order might distance Archie and Lilibet from their grandfather, cousins, and British heritage. Accepting it would make him part of Meghan's humiliation. He apologized for bringing the royal conflict into their home. She answered that the conflict had followed him because he had never truly been allowed to leave it behind. Then the pressure escaped the palace. Fragments of the directive reached a London newsroom before Harry had responded. The leaked wording focused on security, confidentiality, and protected royal spaces, but it omitted the disputed recording device. That absence made the alleged breach seem darker, as though the palace possessed evidence too serious to release. Harry understood the tactic immediately. Public judgment was being shaped before he had spoken. Meghan drafted a statement declaring that she would not seek entry under conditions separating her dignity from her husband's status. Harry asked her to hold it until he spoke with Charles. She agreed, but only until the final hour. Harry entered his office and opened a drawer containing an old royal insignia from his former working life. He placed it beside the directive, studied both, then shut the insignia away, while leaving the order on the desk. With 18 hours remaining, the telephone rang. For the first time since the ultimatum began, the crisis would be stripped of documents and titles, leaving only a father and son confronting what they had already lost. The call came late in Britain and early in California. Charles was alone. Harry asked Meghan to remain nearby, but closed the study door before answering. There were no private secretaries listening, no official notes being taken, and no carefully phrased palace language to soften the damage. For several moments, father and son heard only each other breathing across the distance. Then Charles said Harry's childhood name, and the anger surrounding the crown briefly gave way to something far more painful. Charles began carefully. He said the ban was not meant to punish Harry or the children. The king described it as a protective boundary, created after trust collapsed during the Windsor meeting, and security officials refused to guarantee future confidential access. A protective boundary meant a formal limit designed to prevent further conflict, even when that limit carried personal pain. He insisted the decision was about control, not revenge. Harry rejected the distinction immediately. Excluding Meghan punished all of them because she was not an accessory to his royal identity. She was his wife, the mother of his children, and the person expected to stand beside him. Any arrangement requiring him to return without her would turn family contact into betrayal. He told his father that the palace could not separate one person from a family and still call the result protection. Charles admitted his fear. Every attempt at reconciliation had ended in more public hostility, more leaks, and deeper mistrust. The monarch confessed through the private call that another uncontrolled confrontation could damage the institution and destroy whatever personal relationship remained between them. Harry answered that fear had become the excuse for every decision no one wanted to own. Harry's voice broke when he finally said what had remained buried for years. The crown demanded loyalty before offering love. He had waited for Charles to defend him as a son, instead of managing him as a royal problem. The king listened without interruption, and the silence that followed carried more weight than any denial. Charles moved away from his desk and sat near the window. He removed his signet ring, a personal ring carrying the sovereign's symbol and authority, and placed it on the table. Then, answer me as my son, not as a prince. What can you live with? Harry did not hesitate. He could live without ceremonies, patronages, and invitations. A patronage was an official connection between a royal figure and a charity or public organization. He could not live with teaching Archie and Lilibet that their mother's exclusion was the price of belonging. He would not accept the conditions. Charles offered one final compromise. The nationwide prohibition could become a temporary restriction on royal estates if Meghan signed a strict confidentiality agreement. Harry refused. He would not accept a separate standard for his wife. The king did not threaten him. He simply said he understood what the answer must be. Understanding it now does not make it hurt less, Harry replied. Neither man said goodbye immediately. When the private call ended, the emotional decision was complete, but its public meaning was about to be fought over, beneath palace gates, television lights, and headlines across the world. By sunrise, the private ultimatum belonged to the world. News alerts interrupted morning broadcasts. Palace correspondents stood outside royal residences before officials had issued a complete statement. Supporters praised the crown for drawing a final boundary. Critics called the order an act of institutional exile. Yet one image captured the public mood more powerfully than any debate. A solitary woman outside Buckingham Palace holding two photographs, Diana beside her sons, and Harry beside his wife. Harry's answer became official before the palace could shape the first wave of reaction. His statement confirmed that he rejected every condition attached to Meghan's exclusion and would not attend royal engagements that required him to separate public duty from his immediate family. A royal engagement meant an official appearance carried out in connection with the monarchy. The decision mattered because it turned a private family conflict into a public break with the institution itself. Buckingham Palace responded with carefully measured sadness. The announcement said the king's decision remained in force and emphasized confidentiality, security, and the sovereign's duty to protect the royal household. The sovereign meant the reigning monarch, whose authority carried responsibility for the institution's stability. Charles read the final draft twice, aware that every sentence would be judged as both policy and emotion. London's newspapers split the country before breakfast. One front page declared, "Harry chooses Meghan," above images of the palace and the Sussex home. Another read, "A father loses his son to save the crown." The first framed Harry as defiant. The second framed Charles as victorious in public and broken in private. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathered beside the railings. Some raised Union flags. Others held signs demanding reconciliation. The woman carrying photographs of Diana and both brothers spoke during a live broadcast. "We watch two boys lose their mother. We should not celebrate watching them lose each other." Her words spread faster than the palace statement. William heard them at Kensington Palace. The prince watched until Diana's photograph filled the coverage, then switched off the television. Catherine asked whether he would contact Harry. He answered that the decision had already been made, but she saw that certainty had brought no peace. The future king had defended the boundary. Now he had to face what that protection had cost. Meghan read messages accusing her of forcing her husband's choice. She put the phone aside when Archie asked why everyone was talking about Britain. She told him that sometimes adults must choose the place where their family feels safe. He accepted the answer, but she carried the pain behind it. Charles removed one sentence from the official palace response. It would have described Harry's refusal as withdrawal from royal family life. The king ordered that wording deleted. His son would no longer serve as a working royal figure, but he would not be erased as family. Hours later, William sent 3 words, "I am sorry too." Harry read the message, placed the phone face down, and did not reply. Beyond the headlines and arguments, the true verdict would emerge not from who appeared victorious, but from what each person was forced to carry after the doors finally closed. When the 48 hours expired, there was no dramatic reversal, no final aircraft crossing the Atlantic, and no palace aide rushing forward with a new compromise. Meghan remained outside Britain. Harry remained beside her. The king's order stood. Yet the silence that followed exposed the cost hidden beneath every official sentence. The monarchy had defended its boundaries with absolute clarity, but clarity did not resemble triumph. It resembled a father looking at an empty place and knowing exactly why it would remain empty. Harry submitted his signed response before the deadline closed. He rejected every condition requiring him to attend royal events without Meghan or accept her exclusion as the price of continued ceremonial standing. Ceremonial standing meant the formal place a royal figure still held within official traditions, appearances, and family occasions. By refusing it, he surrendered the last arrangements that could have connected him to royal life on the palace's terms. Meghan answered with restraint. She issued no attack against Charles, William, or Catherine. Her written statement said only that her family would not seek belonging through division. She then placed the Windsor correspondence into storage, closing the folder that had once represented her hope of defending herself and reopening a path into Britain. This time, she did not prepare another reply. Charles received the signed answer alone. The king read it once, folded it carefully, and returned it to the envelope. He instructed his staff that no one was to describe the outcome as a victory. The monarch kept a private channel open for contact with Harry and the children, but he did not revoke the order. Authority remained intact. Fatherhood remained wounded. William accepted his part in what followed. The prince admitted to Catherine that his security recommendation had started the chain, even if he had never designed the final prohibition. He told her that protecting the crown could prevent an immediate crisis, but it could not repair the human damage created by that protection. She listened as he finally faced the truth he had avoided. The institution had secured its boundary and still lost something irreplaceable. The directive had succeeded on paper. It ended uncertainty, established control, and prevented further disputes over protected royal spaces. Yet emotionally, It confirmed that the monarchy and the Sussex family could no longer exist inside the same structure, without reopening every old wound. Harry returned to the kitchen where Meghan and the children were waiting. He tore the 48-hour notice once down the middle, placed it in the bin, and stood in silence. She took his hand. No one celebrated. His decision was not surrender, it was not revenge. It was the choice of a husband and father who believed belonging meant nothing if it demanded the exclusion of the person beside him. The Crown preserved its rules, titles, residences, and authority. It could control access. It could not command trust, create reconciliation, or erase grief. And so the crisis ended with no hidden agreement and no unfinished choice. The Crown kept its rules, Harry kept his family together, and both sides accepted a separation that power could enforce, but love could never make painless. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.